This is the Sunday stream opening song because the other song is copyrighted. La 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 la. Oh, look, here comes Dog Cat Fox.
Hi, Sky.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Sunday stream, the stream I do on Sundays because Sunday is the day to stream on Sundays. Hope you're all doing well on this beautiful Sunday morning. It's actually really dark and cold where I am, but hey, you know, it's beautiful in its own way, I suppose. I suppose. But yes, hope you're all doing well today on a Sunday weekend. Boy, it's been a roller coaster of the last few days. I tell you what, I won't go over all the intricate details of it all, but in the world, at least, my life is fine. Nothing too crazy going on in real life for me, but in the world in general, between strife and war and crime and unexpected deaths, it's just been, a little bit of a topsy-turvy last 72 hours or so, let's say. But we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about celebrity shenanigans and drama. But before I get into that, who's joining me on this beautiful, beautiful Sunday morning? Mike R., good morning. Vader35, good morning. Johnny Hellcat, good morning. Noah Asensio, good morning. Brittany Holland, good morning. Advocatus Diaboli, good morning. Robert Pincus, good morning. Rotten Corpse, good morning. Urcule De Stefano, good morning. Did I already say Ryan R., good morning. It's Ryan R. and Mike R., the R family. R family. That should be a TV show, just the letter R, R family. And then have Mike and Ryan and how many other R's we have in this universe. Yes, the R multiverse. And anybody else who might be lurking or in the future, good morning. So before I begin formally, a couple of things. Apparently, YouTube, in its infinite wisdom, has continued to change its algorithms for things. Now, as you may know, I don't have exactly the biggest channel on the planet, subscriber-wise or otherwise. However, there are people who, as far as I know, like to get notifications when I do go live. Apparently, notifications are temperamental now. People who are signed up for notifications may not get them when they're supposed to because of algorithmic preference or something. So I am told the way to combat this is to, and I swear I am not just, soliciting attention here, but these are the rules that YouTube has put upon us. In order for people to get their notifications more often than not, people that do see these streams have to like them, comment on them, share them, and make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Because those are apparently now the necessary signifiers to the algorithm to alert even people who have asked for alerts to channel streams and channel videos to get those notifications. I don't make the rules, I just live in them. So if by any chance you're not currently subscribed to my channel, and you don't have the bell button clicked and notified and all that stuff, if you're not liking the streams, if you're not occasionally just dropping a comment, even if it's just to say hi, all of that would be appreciated. Yeah, I guess that's how it is now. So there's my PSA for the channel. Now, PSA at the top of the chat box for the GoFundMes and fundraisers up there for our friends Maddie, Angry Illinoisian, and Roan Harushan. Now, Roan Harushan is getting married. Apparently this coming Tuesday. Surprise! So congratulations to Roan and oncoming Mrs. Roan. Miss Roan? Mrs. Roan. Hope you guys have a lovely wedding and a prosperous and fruitful future together. But speaking of Roan, there's a GoFundMe up there. Roan needs a little bit of help in the grand scheme of things, a little bit of help. $700 just to help cover rent upcoming because of, personal crises and just circumstance of life and everything. So if you guys have a couple of bucks to spare, please consider donating to Roan today. I'm going to highlight his GoFundMe in a celebration of his upcoming wedding. If you can't donate, that's fine. But if you can share that out on social media, that would be appreciated. So thank you so much ahead of time for that. Back to the chat real quick. Derek LaRue, thank you again, as always, for your continued generosity and support. Really do appreciate it. Thank you so much. Hope you're having a good Sunday. Who else is here? Bruno Montiero, One Ton Hammer. Good morning. Good morning. Irving Spider-Man. Good morning. Anybody else? Nathaniel Rotskull. Good morning. And I think that's everybody. If I missed anybody, I apologize. But okay, let's get into this. Unfortunately, this needs some preamble. Okay, this needs a little preamble. I did a whole stream on the article in question here, but for the sake of reference, I need to do a little bit of preamble on what we're talking about in case somebody's coming in late. So I'll try to be as concise as I can, but it'll take me a minute. Hasan Minhaj is a stand-up comedian and TV presenter. He has had several Netflix specials. He had a TV show called Patriot Act, which ran for, I think, 2 seasons, which was kind of a skit / news commentary show. And he, at least as of the time of the article we're going to be talking about was published, he was, I don't know if he still is, in the running to replace Trevor Noah as the host of The Daily Show. So on September 15th of this year, just over a month ago, an article was published in The New Yorker talking about Hasan Minhaj, and specifically how several of the stories that Hasan Minhaj has told about his life and various things that have either happened to him or that almost happened to him were untrue, or at least, at the very least, could not be verified in any reasonable way. Now, I re-listened to my own stream on this article the other day to refresh myself on what we'd be talking about today. So I'm going to, in brief, go over the major stories from that article that turned out to be not true. If you want to have a full understanding of the stories and the context, I urge you to go either read the article yourself, or there's a link in the description below to my original stream where I go over the entire article on the Sunday stream. So I don't know if I have these exactly in order that they were presented in the article, but here they are. Story number 1. As a teenager, Hasan Minhaj was able to spot a plant at his family's mosque in a man called Brother Eric, who turned out to be a federal agent or a federal asset, let's say, who tried to effectively entrap Hasan and his friends into talking about jihad. This was in some period of time after 9/11. In the course of all of this, Hasan was grabbed by authorities and slammed down on the hood of a car in interrogating and investigating the potential problems at this mosque. The story was absolutely not true. Brother Eric was a real person, but at the time that this was supposed to have happened in Hasan's history, that individual was in jail and had not yet begun working as an asset for the FBI. So none of that was true. Another story that he told was that he had the opportunity as the host of the Patriot Act show to interview one of the Saudi royal family, I forget exactly who it was, at the Saudi embassy in New York. And so he went to do this. And then as he left the interview, he was called by his staff and everything, asking if he was okay. Are you all right? Are you safe? And he had no idea why they were asking him these things. Well, it turns out on the very day that he was interviewing the Saudi official at the embassy in New York, Jamal Khashoggi was murdered at the Saudi embassy in Turkey. And so it was just this weird kind of conflagration of events, except that never happened because Hasan did the interview a month prior to the murder of Jamal Khashoggi. But again, this is a story that Minhaj told in his various presentations. Another story was that as a teenager, he had asked a white girl out on a date for a school dance, and she had agreed to this. But then as he showed up to her house, all dressed up and ready to go to the dance with flowers in his hand, he saw on the porch of the house or something, another boy pinning a corsage on her. And this was because her parents did not want her dating a brown boy or something like that. That never happened. She had turned him down for the dance days prior to this purported event. And the other part is that in using this girl as an example in his stand-up and in his specials of a situation where he was unfairly victimized, he made very little effort to conceal her identity And as a result, the woman in real life was tracked down, doxxed, and harassed by people for being a racist, even though she ended up marrying a Indian American, something else that Minhaj apparently obscured from public view during his presentations. And the last story that I recall, and this is the big one, at some point, Hasan Minhaj received an envelope at his home filled with white powder. And this powder ended up falling on or getting exposed onto his baby daughter, who then had to be rushed to the hospital on the chance that she might have been poisoned by someone. And in the course of this, his wife, Hasan Minhaj's wife, threatened him that if he didn't stop, putting the family in danger with his rhetoric and his comedy that was taking on all these tyrants and despots, she would leave him. None of that happened. There was never an envelope of white powder. His daughter was never taken to the hospital. None of that ever happened. It was all made up. Now, the argument in the article about why or how telling these stories that were either entirely untrue or had their timelines conflated for dramatic purposes was okay was twofold. On the one hand, can a comedian tell a story on stage that is not true for the sake of a joke, for the sake of a punchline? And my answer would be yes. I brought up the example in the last stream about Norm Macdonald. Norm Macdonald could tell the most outlandish stories and use himself as the inserted avatar of the events, or his Uncle Jack, or his father, or anything else. And it would all lead up to some ridiculous punchline and some funny story. That's fine. The issue I had when reading the article and the examples presented was that none of these stories had punchlines. None of them had punchlines. Each and every one of them was a story of Hasan was either a hero in some way or a victim or was struggling against something or some force or some outside influence and was surviving. There was no punchline. There's nothing, no joke there. Now, granted, I didn't hear these stories in the context of a comedy special, but then I don't know. I didn't see anything particularly funny or punchline-ish about the stories. But that aside, maybe it's just not my cup of tea. It's when you start telling these stories outside of the comedic sphere. It's when you start telling these stories as though they are facts of your life and hold them up as examples of your personal struggle and hardships that it becomes not about comedy anymore. It becomes what I quoted as fabulism. You know, taking a otherwise ordinary life and trying to make it more extraordinary with fibs and lies and made up things. The other part that I found particularly annoying about the article is that he would relate the false stories he told to people who had actually had bad things happen to them. He wouldn't mention those people in the stories he told on stage. No, he made himself the star of these made up stories. And I called that stolen valor, where you're taking someone else's victimization, someone else's hardship, and replacing yourself with it and playing off as though you were the recipient of these things. So that was the article as presented. But as we all know, articles are not necessarily objective. As we all know, the author has their own perspective on things, and that may, find its way into the article, into its interpretation. So over a month after the article was published, just about 2 or 3 days ago, Hasan Minhaj posted a 20-minute rebuttal video to the article. Now, I have not watched this. I don't know what he's going to say. I do have some indication he may play clips from other TV shows like Bill Maher or something. If we get to that point, I might have to skip over that part just for the sake of avoiding any copyright issues, because I don't know what the situation is, but I'm not willing to sort of roll the dice on that. It may just be stills. All I know is that when I was editing the audio for boosting the volume, I did see at least one frame showed Bill Maher on his show. But I don't know if that's a freeze frame or if that's a video clip. So we'll find out as we go. A few more hellos before I begin. Apologies for the grand introduction, but I needed to give some context. Cody Music, good morning. Simon Willikins, good morning. Ebony Williams, good morning. Those Ain't Real Dude, good morning. Anthem Ward, good morning. I hope I got everybody. All right, with all that as introduction, let's begin. All right, this goes 20 minutes. I'm going to try to get the whole thing in. That's what she said. And we'll see what he has to say. But I'm keeping an open mind here. right? The article was just one perspective. So, what does Hasan Minhaj have to say about the accusations that he made up entire swaths of his personal history and then used those for attention and or sympathy?
I know the news coming out of the Middle East right now feels devastating.
Yes, it's true. It does. Also, good morning, SWD40. You guys hear that okay? Let me know in the chat real quick. Still waking up a little bit. I wanted to sleep in so bad. I was like, I'm so comfy, but I have a show. I have a show. I am dedicated to my schedule. Anyway.
And hopeless.
Yes.
And I've been asked by a lot of people to give my perspective on what is happening.
How many people is a lot of people? Wait. A lot of people have asked you to give your perspective on what's happening in the Middle East. I mean, if you say so, here's the problem. Here's the problem going into this. If the article is accurate, if the reporter, having gone to witnesses, checked timelines, tried to verify the stories, if all of that is true in the sense that he is, making up stories, grand stories all the time to enhance his own cachet in life, can I believe anything that he says here either? Unfortunately, that's the problem. But okay, a lot of people have asked you for your input on what's going on in the Middle East and
the region.
Uh-huh.
I've also been asked, wait a second. Aren't you a liar?
Well, yeah. That is the point of this, right?
Now, for those of you who don't know, back in September, the New Yorker ran a piece on me called Hasan Minhaj's Emotional Truths.
Oh, Hasan Minhaj's. Okay, I've been mispronouncing his name. I've done my best.
In which a reporter fact-checked my stand-up specials and found some factual inaccuracies that they wanted to ask me about.
Yeah. It was pretty damning, I'll tell you.
So I sat down with them to explain my writing process and why I make certain creative choices in my stand-up. Well,
and just as a note, and I do have to keep pausing occasionally because, just reasons. The biggest issue, I think, is that he could have gotten away with some of these stories if he hadn't inserted other people that really exist and whose information, whereabouts, and activities couldn't have been verified otherwise. Like I said, the brother Eric individual in the mosque example was a real person that had been documented in his activities and so on, and so easily verifiable or not. The girl who turned him down for the date, obviously somebody that could be found, followed up on, and information thereof. Saying he had to take his daughter to the hospital because of an envelope with white powder in it. Well, something like that, especially happening in and around New York, is going to have a police report, is going to have a Homeland Security investigation, is going to have hospital records. All these things aren't like flights of fancy you just put into a bit, right? These are things that can be verified, and then you play off as though they really happen. That's the major problem.
Now, when the article came out, it got picked up by almost every single news outlet, all of them basically saying the same thing.
Critics are raising questions about.
Okay, I don't know if. See, this is the problem. If they start playing footage from other sources, I don't know if I can, quote unquote, get away with that. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, okay. I'm not going to play this stuff. I'm just going to focus in on his commentary. I'm not going to play footage from other outlets. Sorry, guys.
Everything that's happening in the world, I'm aware even talking about this now feels so trivial.
I don't know. I mean, your entire reputation is on the line. Your, future career aspects are on the line. I can understand it. Although this will join the ranks of maybe some of the greatest YouTube apology and or explanation videos of all time, depending.
But being accused of faking racism is not trivial.
You're right. You're correct. We're in Jussie Smollett territory.
It is very serious, and it demands an explanation.
Okay.
So to everyone who read that article, I want to answer the biggest question that's probably on your mind.
Oh, okay. What's the biggest question on my mind?
Is Hasan Minhaj secretly a psycho?
No, I never, no, I never said psycho. I said fabulist. There's a difference. There is a difference.
Underneath all that pomade, is Hasan Minhaj just a con artist who uses fake racism and Islamophobia to advance his career?
Well, I don't know if I'd put it about the pomade thing, but yeah, no, that is the question. That is the question.
Because after reading that article, I would also think that.
Okay.
So I took a beat before responding.
Okay. Yeah, about over a month. Okay.
Because like you, I've been paralyzed by the news coming out of the Middle East.
I have been paralyzed. I don't know why you're bringing up the Middle East in this. This has nothing to do with the Middle East. And besides which, the events of the Middle East happened on October 7th. This article came out on September 15th. So there's a good 20 some odd days between the article being published and the events of the Middle East coming out. So you had the better part of a month to say something prior to this. I don't understand why you're bringing up the Middle East.
And I've been processing all the criticism that has come my way. And I just want to say,
yes,
to anyone who felt betrayed or hurt by my stand-up, I am sorry.
Anyone who felt betrayed or hurt, you're sorry. Okay, you know, being sorry for someone's feelings about something you did, that's like, you know, taking a brick, throwing it through a glass window, and apologizing for the glass breaking. That doesn't really... okay, all right, well, not the best start.
I made artistic choices to express myself and drive home larger issues affecting me and my community, and I feel horrible.
You do? Doesn't sound like you feel horrible. Sounds like you feel justified. Artistic choices. Okay. I guess I need to know, what is the difference between, in this instance, where you're talking about autobiographical stories of hardship, struggle, and hatred, what's the difference between an artistic choice and a lie?
That I let people down. And the reason I feel horrible is because I'm not a psycho.
So if you were a psycho, you would feel horrible? Wait a second. Oh, man. Okay, now, I truth be told, and full disclosure here, up until reading this article, I think I had seen maybe 5 minutes of this guy's stand-up in the years prior. I knew the name. I recognized the face. I didn't know the guy's show. I didn't know his comedy, anything else. It's one of those things where he's someone that exists on the periphery of your knowledge of things. But I'll tell you what, that line alone has got a bigger laugh out of me in the last 24 hours than anything else. So kudos to him for that. Thank you, Johnny Hellcat. Enter South Park BP an apology. Oh, yeah, exactly. We're sorry if we hurt anybody's feelings. Oh, man. Okay. You know, I don't feel bad because I'm not a psycho. Excuse me. Oh, man. That was something else. Mr. Tickle Trunk, thank you so much for the smiley, happy, lovely dog cat fox. Oh, dog cat fox.
Wow, wee. Wow, wow.
That is a tailed feature dog cat fox. Thank you so much, Mr. Tickle Trunk. Hope you're having a good morning. All right. So you don't feel bad because you're not a psycho. Okay.
But this New Yorker article definitely makes me look like one. It was so needlessly misleading.
Okay, tell us how.
Not just about my stand-up, but also me as a person.
Okay, as far as I recall, and I'm happy to be corrected, the article was very professional and focused on taking the text of your stories and checking them for factual accuracy. And the portions of the interview that happened between you and the author, which admittedly, the author put in however much of the interview that they felt like they had to put in. So if there was something left out, hopefully we'll get it here. But there wasn't a whole lot of assessment of you as a person, save for those quotations that came from people who had worked with you or had been under you at the Patriot Act show. I mean, they might have assessed your character in some way, shape, or form in there, but the author was fairly detached from making assessments about you so much as the stories. That's what I recall. Again, I'm happy to be corrected. Thank you, Chicago Mike. I'm sorry you feel that way is not a real apology. No, it isn't. It really isn't. Okay, sorry. Here we go.
The truth is,
yes,
racism, FBI surveillance, and threats to my family happened. And I said this on the record.
Okay, and you have evidence of this, right?
So I'm going to do the most Hasan Minhaj thing ever.
Talking about yourself in the third person doesn't help things so much. But okay.
I'm going to do a deep dive on my own scandal with graphics. Because there was so much evidence I gave the New Yorker that they ignored that I want to show you.
Okay. And like I say, I'm here as much as possible, though, you know, through a humorous lens, through my artistic choices, to have an open mind and listen to what he has to say. Because, like I say, the New Yorker article is just one perspective, one person's analysis, and so on and so forth. If he's got evidence to the contrary, okay. But here's the thing that's going to be interesting to see. Is he going to provide proof that the stories highlighted in the article were true? Okay, so we have Brother Eric, we have the envelope, we have the date, we have the embassy interview. Those are the 4 stories that I recall. Oh, there was also a threatening letter that was sent to the studio that didn't have a whole lot of extra information on it, but I felt like smelled a little bit Jussie Smollett territory. Either way, there's at least 4 major stories in that article that were highlighted. So he's going to show us how those stories were actually true.
So buckle up because it's about to get tedious.
Okay.
There are 3 stories from that article that I want to address.
But there were at least 4 stories in the article. I just listed them off.
The anthrax scare.
Okay.
The FBI informant story.
Right, Brother Eric.
But first, I want to talk about how and why I was rejected from prom. Now, let me first say this.
Okay, so you're not going to talk about the embassy thing. Okay, rejected from prom. Okay.
I am 38 years old with a wife and 2 kids.
Yes.
I do not give a shit about prom.
Then why did you put it in your show? Why did you show a photograph of the lady with her face obscured? What?
But it's a big story from my first stand-up special, and the New Yorker implied that I made it all up and that my race wasn't a factor in my rejection.
They didn't say that. I mean, somebody please check me. The article didn't say that. The article dealt with, did you walk up to her house ready to take her out on a date that had already been set up, and she, without telling you otherwise, had decided to go with another boy, and you only found that out when you walked up to the house? Okay. Your story is that the family did not want her dating a brown boy or a non-white boy. I forget what it is exactly. I don't know that the article ever said that race had nothing to do with it. It's that that event never happened. And the characterizing of the girl in the situation as a bad person bled over into real life. Okay, all right. But if you say so.
But it was, and I have the evidence to prove it.
Okay.
So, in Homecoming King, I told a story about how I was supposed to go to prom with a white girl named Bethany Reed. Her real name is not Bethany. I changed it to protect her anonymity.
Even though that she's since been discovered because of the way that you put things out there and you invited her to a Broadway show. Okay.
I say that I show up at Bethany's house on prom night, but at the doorstep, her mom tells me they don't want her to go to prom with me because they'll be taking a lot of pictures and they don't want their family back home to see her with a brown boy.
Okay. I thought it was you saw a boy putting another corsage on her, but okay, this is a different version than presented in the article, but then I haven't seen every performance, so I don't know. Thank you, Johnny Hellcat. Someone's high school reunion is going to get awkward. If it wasn't already. All right. Okay. So Mom came to you at the doorstep. So you showed up for the date and she stopped you and prevented you from taking her daughter out on the date.
Bethany's mom
Uh-huh.
did really say that.
Did she say it to your face when you got there?
It was just a few days before prom.
Okay. All right. So you enhanced the truth, right? Oh, the other thing I forgot to mention, the emotional truths. This was another one of his defenses in the article, that despite what the actual truth might be, his storytelling and comedy deals more with emotional truth, something that feels right for the sake of the story.
And I created the doorstep scene to drop the audience into the feeling of that moment, which I told the reporter.
Is the doorstep moment true? Like,
No,
did that happen?
No. It happened before. But the emotional truth remains the same. Her mom going, "Hey, sweetie, we take photos and we don't want people to see. We have family back home."
Did she sort of give that as the reason of like, my parents aren't comfortable with going to,
Yes. And it just destroyed me.
Yeah. Sure. That's understandable.
The reporter said it's understandable.
Yes, because she's trying to make sure that the interview goes civilly and you continue to cooperate. Right? That doesn't forgive the lie. She's trying to elicit information from you and not make it hostile.
But none of what I explicitly said makes it in the article.
Nothing of what you explicitly said. What do you mean? She said it happened days before. Okay.
This is what they wrote instead.
She told me that she turned down Minhaj, who was then a close friend, in person days before the dance. Minhaj acknowledged that this was correct, but he said that the two of them had long carried different understandings of her rejection.
This whole paragraph makes it sound like I got friend zoned by Bethany, and then I turned into an angry incel and then faked racism to get back at her.
Okay. Well, I mean, you're not letting us listen to the entirety of the interview either, so I don't know. What was there anything said before that portion in the recording of the interview or after that related to this? I mean, if you say so.
And I think this sentence is the reason why people believe that. He said that the two of them had long carried different understandings of her rejection.
Okay.
This sentence is incredibly misleading and implies the exact opposite of what I meant.
Well, then play us the part in the interview that pertains to it.
Let me explain.
Play us the part in the interview that pertains to it.
Okay. Over a decade after prom, in August of 2014,
Well, for something that you didn't care about so much, boy, oh boy, very detailed.
Bethany and I met at a restaurant called Sarah Betts in New York, and we cleared the air on what her mom said to me at prom.
All right, wait, when was this? Sorry, I got to back up a little bit. How long ago was this?
I meant. Let me explain.
Okay.
Over a decade after prom, in August of 2014.
August of 2014. Okay.
Bethany and I met at a restaurant called Sarah Betts in New York, and we cleared the air on what her mom said to me at prom. Now, I talk about this in Homecoming King, and I also told the New Yorker about this meetup.
She had an understanding that we were like totally cool. And like I had been carrying something completely different.
Okay.
And I just told her what it meant. Like, it's like, do you understand what it's like being a skinny Muslim Desi brown kid in Davis, California? And, you know, we're always told to put our head down and just take it. And I did. And I carried this water for like years and years.
When the article says we had different understandings, what I clearly meant was that Bethany never knew how much her family being racist had affected me. That's why we had different understandings.
Okay. But the story still wasn't true the way you told it, right? And didn't she end up marrying an Indian American man, or is that not true? The article said she did. So I thought, what about the part where you walk up and you see another boy pinning a corsage on the girl? What about that part? The mother stopping you at the door. I don't remember that being mentioned in the, maybe I'm misremembering something, but okay.
Not because Bethany denied this happened. In fact, Bethany basically confirmed in writing that racism was a factor in the prom rejection.
I don't think the article ever said that racism didn't exist in the situation. I think the article talked about you walking up to the door on the night of the prom and finding Bethany, in this case, being, having a corsage put on her by another boy. And that's when you found out that you were being rejected, rather than actually being rejected days prior. But I thought it was the girl, not her mother. But okay, all right. So who rejected who, apparently, is a question here, not the when or the details.
In 2015, I sent Bethany an email congratulating her on her wedding to a man of color.
Congratulations on marrying a non-white man. Can you imagine that conversation? Can we see that email? I would love to see that email. Oh, boy.
Congratulating her on her wedding to a man of color, saying, I know I told you about sharing the story about us not being able to go to prom together with kids and communities to talk, but this ending, you guys getting married, is proof that love conquers all. It's a testament to the way the world truly can be.
So you're not accusing her of racism in the subtext of that at all? Oh, wait a second. Wait a second. I know I told you about sharing the story about us not being able to go to prom together, names, etc. changed, with kids and communities to talk about forgiveness and perseverance, but this ending, you guys getting married. Does that just mean to seem a little... Wait, wishing you guys the absolute best, and here's to a life filled with gorgeous Zayn Malik mixed race babies? What the heck am I reading? Oh my gosh, congratulations on your future eugenics experiment. Like What is... Okay, keep going, dude.
Wishing you guys the absolute best, and here's to a life filled with gorgeous Zayn Malik mixed race babies.
Okay, I understand. He's a comedian. It's a joke. But given the context...
Yep, I'm aware.
Uh-huh.
I write emails the way Lin-Manuel Miranda talks.
I don't know how Lin-Manuel Miranda talks. What do you mean? Why are you... What?
I'm not proud of it, but let's stay focused.
Oh, man. I tell you what. I've never seen this guy's Netflix stand-up specials, but I'm getting more laughs out of this than I think I probably would that.
Bethany then replied saying, I do think love conquers all. And while it might always be challenging, true love is worth the fight. We also had the unique opportunity to showcase both our cultures at the wedding, with a ceremony for each. I think my parents have come a long way too.
Okay, so the entirety of this is, guys, her family is totes racist. Never mind that the story I told was untrue. Never mind that I implied that both she and her family were totes racist the entire time. Are you going to address the fact that she was harassed and doxxed by your fans?
And what would her parents have to come a long way from?
Not liking you.
Racism.
Oh, okay.
Again, I don't care about prom. I
don't care. I just took an event from my life and crafted it into a total and absolute dramatic victimhood narrative with untrue events and mischaracterizations of people's character in order to put myself up as a victim and use it in my comedy specials to sell tickets. But I don't care about prom.
I mean that. And Bethany didn't do anything wrong.
Who said she ever did?
And I wish her and her family nothing but the best.
Her
parents have grown. My parents have grown.
Your parents have grown? What did your parents do?
That's the point of the whole show.
What?
And that should be celebrated. Love conquers all.
Is there a but coming?
But
oh man, this is great. This is the best comedy special I've watched in a long time.
I do not appreciate the New Yorker implying that I made up racism.
Again, I don't know that the New Yorker said you made up racism. It was the details of the events that you put out there. You were rejected the night of the prom. You showed up at the door with flowers in your hand and all dressed up, ready to take the girl out. And that's when either A and or B, you saw the girl with another boy having a corsage pinned on her, and her mother told you to go away. Whereas all of this occurred days before the prom. It was just one more example of you making up stories. And I don't even think it was the biggest story of the deal, except for the fact that it got involved with the real person who ended up being tracked down by your fans and harassed and accused of things. Thank you, Johnny Hellcat. TLDR, she rejected him and it shattered him. I mean, I don't know. I don't care about prom. Now let me spend 7 minutes talking about prom down to the nitty gritty. And also, I used it in my specials and retold the story several times in the past. I don't know.
My team and I repeatedly try to give them the emails that you just saw.
As early as, I believe fall 2014.
I have these if you want.
Yeah, and then we have email correspondence in 2017, which we can give you.
Okay.
Then I now shift to email correspondence, which she can give you.
I have it. I can send it.
Yeah. So there's and happy to give you all these emails.
Sure.
Not only.
Okay, well, again, like I say, this is why I'm listening to this, is because obviously the article is only what the author decided to show, right? And I don't know so far that you're showing the emails changes a whole heck of a lot about the events of the story, because the primary question about this story was, did the events occur as you relayed them on stage and otherwise prior to all this? And the answer is no. They didn't. You didn't show up at the door and were rejected on the night of the prom. Whatever occurred happened days prior, and you over-dramatized the situation. Now, the motivations of the family of the girl, maybe they're legitimately racist. Maybe they were, right? Or at least the family, because apparently the girl was interested in dating you at some point, right? You asked her out, she said yes, and then later said no, I guess. But I don't think the article was saying the family wasn't racist. The article was saying your recitation of events was untrue.
Only that. We confirmed the emails were sent to the reporter and their fact checker before the article came out.
Okay, well, they're not obligated to use those emails, and they're not proof of much of anything that hasn't already been said.
Therefore, they knew my rejection was due to race. I confirmed it.
Okay, you know what? I'm going to have to reread the article again, because I don't recall that the story about the prom night had so much to do about whether or not the family was racist, but so much about whether or not the events he said actually occurred the way that he said they did. I don't think the article made any conclusion one way or the other about the legitimacy of the family's motivation, if there was one, for their daughter not to date him. I don't think they said that didn't happen or that that wasn't the motivation. They were talking about your story about the events that took place that night.
On the record and provided corroborating evidence. And yet, they misled readers by excluding all of that and splicing two different quotes together to leave you thinking that I made up a racist incident.
No. Again, it's not about the motivation. It's about the chain of events. You did not get rejected on the porch the night of the prom. That you already admitted to that. So this entire thing is kind of nothing. Real quick in the chat. Xtran, Scribe Coleman Hughes was on the Glenn show. You should have a stream on that. I am planning on doing a Coleman Hughes breakdown, reading the article about the TED or TEDx talk or whatever, and then watching it, because I with life and my computer dying and a whole bunch of other things, I've had that sort of project in mind for a couple of weeks now, and I just kept not getting around to it. But someday soon, I'm going to do a special event where I look at the Coleman Hughes situation with Ted and TEDx and everything. So that is in my mind to do. It's just been a comedy of errors getting there. So anyway, are we going to move on to the next story now?
Now, the article also implies that I humiliated Bethany and got her doxxed with my carelessness. So I want to show you evidence that shows that that isn't true.
Okay.
Back in November of 2015, when Homecoming King was running off Broadway, Bethany came to the show. And this is how the New Yorker reported it.
The woman said that Minhaj had invited her and her husband to an off-Broadway performance. She'd initially interpreted the invitation as an attempt to rekindle an old friendship, but she now believes the move was meant to humiliate her.
Okay, so I'm pausing for dramatic effect here also because of, YouTube stuff. Okay. And your rejoinder is?
I promise it was never my intention to humiliate Bethany at the show.
Okay, dude, at this point, you really need to lay off making promises or declarations of truth. Okay? All you've got in your bullpen here is whatever evidence you can bring, because your credibility is what is in question. So you making promises after you've already admitted that you made up the story about showing up at the doorstep the night of the prom and being rejected. We already know that that's not true. You've already admitted that that's not the case. Okay. And you're focusing in on an element of the story, the racism part, which I don't think the article tried to say wasn't true. But now there's this. Okay, so stop making promises. Just show us, if you have evidence, show us the evidence.
But this reporting is false.
Okay.
I looked back at our emails and I found out that I didn't invite Bethany to that show. She emailed me out of the blue and told me that she was coming because her friend saw the show and said they loved it.
Actually, this is are actually coming to show on for. Okay, so you didn't invite her. She just showed up of her own accord. Okay, so she hadn't seen it yet at the time of this email. Okay.
After the show, Bethany also texted me that it was awesome and we kept in touch for years. I included her in the journey with full transparency. I put her in touch with fact checkers from This American Life. I invited her to the Netflix premiere party. I even emailed her to take down a tweet that might reveal her identity. Bethany then responded with a really nice email that ended with her saying, P.S. Thanks for the heads up on the tweet. I deleted the other ones, but this one escaped me. It's shockingly hard to resurface old social media, apparently. Thanks, too, for always protecting me and my family. I don't think I've ever formally thanked you for that, and I do sincerely appreciate it.
Okay. Well, if the New Yorker mischaracterized that, then, that might be a reasonable contradiction.
Even in the Netflix special, I don't use any real photos of Bethany or her family. Those are actors, and their faces are blurred.
Oh, is that true? See, you know why I have to ask that question?
Maintaining Bethany's anonymity has always been a priority for me. I would never want her to get doxxed or harassed. And if there were any negative consequences that came your way, Bethany, I am sorry about that.
Wait, you don't know if there were? After this much time, you don't know whether there were or not? Okay, so the New Yorker made that up out of whole cloth? I mean, I don't know. I can't recall that the New Yorker ever gave any examples of the kind of, doxing and or harassment that they cited. So the New Yorker made all that up. And I'm not trying to be snarky when I ask that question. I'm being sincere and just for the sake of, rhetoric here. I don't know. So is that element completely made up by the New Yorker?
I am not perfect, but I promise I am not needlessly cruel, even though that's what the New Yorker wants you to believe, despite the evidence.
Okay, well, I would want to know, did the New Yorker misquote Bethany? Because presumably they spoke to her. They were talking. I guess I need to know where they got their information from, right? And they admittedly they didn't provide that directly in the article, so that could be just all made up, I suppose, or an interpretation, an emotional truth.
I was an open book. I sat down in good faith. They had my testimony in 4 years of correspondence, backed up with receipts, all on the record that showed my race was a factor in my prom rejection.
I don't think they ever said that it wasn't. It was the details of the event. You did not show up to the doorstep the night of the prom and were rejected then. It happened days prior and was not so dramatic.
I wasn't careless with Bethany's privacy.
If you say so, I mean, like I say, in this instance, you've at least got some receipts, whereas the New Yorker never presented any direct evidence to say that she was doxxed or harassed or anything. So the point is in your court on that on that element of it, at least.
And she thanked me for keeping her family's identity safe. So how could the New Yorker imply the opposite?
I don't know, and I'm honestly curious. Where do they justify themselves by saying that?
But here's the bigger question.
Uh-huh.
Why did the New Yorker fact check my stand-up special, but not properly fact check their own article?
Yeah, okay. That is a fair point. Okay. So I'm not taking the New Yorker at their word on this. Okay, fine. You still made up the story though, right?
If you're still here, I have two more stories that I want to address.
Okay. And this is going to be the Brother Eric story. All right.
Now, in my second special, The King's Jester, I tell a story about how I met and was harassed by an FBI informant named Brother Eric.
Yes.
I talk about how he tried to entrap me at a gym, and when I made fun of him, he slammed me against the hood of a cop car.
Okay.
The truth is,
a cop car.
I did have altercations with undercover law enforcement growing up.
But not Brother Eric.
And that experience formed the basis of this story.
Okay, so you never met Brother Eric, and you were never slammed down on the hood of a cop car?
But it didn't go down exactly like this.
Because there was no Brother Eric there, right? You made that all up.
So I understand why people are upset.
I know. I'm not upset. Here's the thing. Like I say, and this is just for me. I can't say for his fans or anybody else. I'm not upset. I'm just fascinated with the celebrity culture and the desire to be a victim, the need to continually make your life more interesting than it actually is. Fabulists fascinate me. I talked about Stephen Glass, the former reporter from, I forget the name of the publication all of a sudden. It suddenly escapes me. Anyway, look up Stephen Glass. He actually ended up, after being caught, he wrote a book, a self-inserted book called The Fabulist. He wrote a book about his own scandal, effectively, and tried to sell it as a novel. You made up stories to enhance the truth to make yourself seem more heroic and or more of a victim. I'm not upset. I find it hilarious because it's so easily debunked with about, half an hour's worth of research on the part of a New Yorker author.
People face real danger at the hands of the police, and false stories can undermine real stories.
Yes. This is why I said stolen valor last time. Advocatus Diaboli, the New Republic. Thank you. I was like, part of me wanted to say the American Standard or something. I'm like, that's not the publication. The New Republic. Yes. Thank you, Advocatus.
And I am sorry I added to that problem.
You're sorry you added to that problem. Okay. So you admit the story was false. The New Yorker was correct in saying you made up that story.
My intention wasn't to take away from these stories.
Yes, it was. Your intention was to take the aggregate experience of other people and put yourself at the center of a victimhood narrative. And you did. That was your intent. You didn't admit that until now when you were forced to. So for years and years and years, you let this story propagate. It didn't occur to you to maybe, clear up that misconception 10 years ago?
It was to spotlight them through my special. That's why I used this story.
No. You didn't spotlight them. You didn't spotlight anyone other than yourself. It's funny that you say spotlight and you have a picture up there of you under a spotlight. No. I don't see other people on that stage. I don't see other people's stories on that stage. All I see is you under that spotlight.
To talk about Hamid Hayat.
Did you talk about Hamid Hayat? Did you talk about you?
Hamid and I were part of the same NorCal Muslim community. When he got entrapped, it rocked our community, and he spent 14 years in prison.
Then why not tell his story? Why make up a story about you? Where are we going to get to the part where Here's a story that the New Yorker talked about, and yes, I made it up. Let's move on. That's all you have to say. Their reporting was accurate. They actually reported on this. They mentioned this guy in the article. You're just repeating what the New Yorker told us, sorry.
We were the same age, same background, and like him, I also had run-ins with undercover agents.
Did you? Why didn't you tell those stories?
I was even physically harassed by them while playing basketball.
Were you? In this instance, okay, the prom date thing, you found the one element of the prom date story that I don't think anybody had any notion of whether or not it's true or not, the whole family motivation, if it was there at all. But in this instance, why should I believe you? Do you have receipts for that? Do you have a police report? Do you have eyewitness testimony? Something?
Now you're probably wondering, why not just say that?
Yeah.
So this is not an excuse. It is.
Then why are we here? Just say, I should have told the truth. I didn't, and I apologize. This is not an excuse? Okay.
It's an explanation of my process.
No. That was not an explanation of your process. You lied. You told an out-and-out fabrication, and you were stealing the valor of a real victim. Now, I don't know all the details of the story of the person, Hayat, that he's got off to the side here. But for the sake of argument, I'm going to assume that what happened to him actually happened. Now, whether it was justified or not, I don't know the details. But that guy did end up becoming the target of undercover operations, of federal investigations, so a whole 9 yards. I'll believe it. You did not go through that. You stole this guy's experience in aggregate and passed it off as your own. It's experiential plagiarism. That's what you did. This is not an excuse. This is part of my process.
When I am storytelling,
when you're lying,
every beat has to do multiple things in a funny and impactful way.
What was funny about this story? I don't know that I care that much, but I would really love to know, how was this story played for laughs?
The story, I had to set up 3 plot points. The moment I realized authority figures hate being made fun of, why I named my show Patriot Act, and spotlight the story of Hamid Hayat.
Did you spotlight the story of Hamid Hayat, though?
Problem is, 99% of people watching Netflix have no idea the FBI spied on Muslims at mosques, or they don't even believe it was real.
That's beside the point. You told a story that was not true. Okay, the fact that you keep diverging off into unrelated subjects rather than your credibility does not help your argument. This isn't about whether or not there was actual federal activity at mosques. I can believe there was. It didn't happen to you.
And I know this because when I performed earlier versions of the story in front of audiences, they had no idea what I was talking about.
Okay. So you were providing a journalistic service to the audience in telling a story about yourself that never happened, involving people who could never have been there. Is that what the argument is?
FBI agents embedding in mosques and entrapping young Muslims through basketball or weightlifting or whatever. It sounds insane.
That's not the point, dude. That's not the point. Emperor W.R. Costin, I wonder when Scribelight made me a mod. I believe it was a long, long time ago. It's been a while. A great while. I think you've been on stream a few times with your wrench, so I don't know. Anyway, are you going to get to the point? So again, you made up that story. I love how you bury the lead. You admit, just like with the prom story. Did you go up to the doorstep and get rejected? No. But now let me tell you a whole bunch of other stuff that's got nothing to do with it. Did you actually get slammed down on the hood by Brother Eric, etc.? No. But let me tell you a whole bunch of other stuff that has nothing to do with it.
But it was happening all over the country.
Just not to you.
Even in my mosque in my hometown. It was infiltrated.
Was it? Okay. And so at what point did Brother Eric appear and slam you down on the hood of a cop car?
And the footage that I used in the special proves that it was very real and very stupid. I wanted to recreate that feeling.
You wanted to lie and profit off of others' misery.
That only Muslims felt for a broad audience, the feeling of paranoia and vindication.
Again, stolen valor.
Tension and release. That is why people laugh at this part. You don't get the release without the tension.
Okay, look, I'm not going to argue with you about the construction of a story. I'm not going to argue with you about constructing something for the sake of a payoff. I get that. Okay. I mean, I'm not much of a writer anymore. But I understand story beats. I understand setup, payoff. I understand having to earn a moment versus just kind of manufacturing one. You lied. None of these things happened to you. You told a story that was not true. If something actually happened to you, as you asked yourself earlier, why not just say that? You never answered your own question. Why not just say that? Why not tell the truth?
That was my artistic intent, which I told the New Yorker.
If you notice something about, even in the show, we pop out of it. And this is actually the point I was trying to make. My dad goes, "That's not Brother Eric. His name is not Eric. His name is Craig."
Except that Brother Eric wasn't there, was he?
And the moment that the reaction the audience is having is, "Nudge me, you're missing the point."
Yeah.
The point is that it doesn't matter if his name was Eric, Craig, or Adam. The point is that there is now a pattern here at large.
Except that person. I mean, unless the New Yorker, unless I'm completely misremembering this, or the New Yorker was wrong, that individual could not have been there. He was in jail and had not yet started working as an informant for the FBI when you say this happened. Or is that not true? If that was not true, I'm pretty sure that would be your headline to this whole section.
Sure.
And that was the thing that I was trying to do. And ultimately, the emotional truth of trying to point a spotlight on my community story and Hamid's story is important to me.
Yeah, but you weren't talking about Hamid. You were talking about you. You made the story about you.
Hamid Hayat's story is really important to me.
Then why wasn't that the story you told?
And he reached out to me after the article came out.
Uh-huh. I'm sure he did. That's got nothing to do with the fact that you made up a story. What has that got to... Okay, so New Yorker says, you told this story, it was untrue. Yes. The New Yorker says, you told this story, it was untrue. Yes. But by the way, there's a lot of people who still like me.
And he wanted me to share these texts.
Uh-huh.
He said that he had nothing but love for me and that I hadn't diminished his story.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I was trying to do.
Then why not tell his story? Why make up a story about you? Why is this all coming out now? Why didn't this confession happen a day after? Why didn't you explain that on the stage? Right? I mean, what kind of reversal with that? I bet there's a way you could have done it where you told a story that put yourself in that situation, right? For the sake of the telling. And then at the very end, you say something like, yeah, but that didn't happen to me. That happened to this guy. And this is the situation, because I'm standing here up on a stage, right? I mean, you could have played off the fact that you lived effectively parallel lives with this guy up to the point where you start telling this story. And the audience is relating to you because they've been watching you on the stage and they know you, or they're there for your comedy and everything else. But then you pull a twist at the end and say, yeah, but Hasan, if all that happened, how are you standing on the stage? How are you not in jail? How did all these things not happen to you? Well, no, you're right. They didn't happen to me. They happened to my friend. And it's only by mere chance that it didn't happen to me. That would have been a very powerful reversal in your own special, but you didn't do that, did you? No. You were the star, not the guy it actually happened to. Anyway.
But the reporter was far more concerned about the FBI informant I talked about in the special.
The accuracy of your story.
Which honestly
felt
very weird.
Fact-checking your story felt really weird? Okay.
In the story about the informant, actually the bulk of the story is about Craig Monty. Like
Sure.
so did you reach out to Craig Monty?
No.
Do you feel like you owe him anything?
I've heard some things and I'd rather not speak on that.
So you feel like you don't owe him, you didn't owe him like a heads up?
As a Muslim, am I supposed to apologize to an ex-con who tried to entrap Muslims for the FBI?
When you accuse, I said this at the time on the previous stream. When you accuse a bad actor of things they did not do and hold them accountable for things they did not do, you turn that person into a legitimate victim of your lie. You know, in small or large portion, you took someone who could not have been where you said he was, doing things to you that he could not have done and did not do, and built a narrative around yourself as a victim to relate yourself to a villain. You found a supervillain in your community and your community's, lore, and associated yourself with that supervillain so you could be a victim of that guy and associate yourself with all of his other victims, thus stolen valor. Do you owe him an apology? Yes. In fact, you do. Because again, this is the difference between legitimate and not legitimate schadenfreude, right? Something bad befalls somebody. Like the person you hate the most, right? Their house burns down because of a lightning strike. Ha ha ha! But they didn't do that to themselves. Schadenfreude really only feels legitimate to me when someone is effectively hoisted upon their own petard, right? Their own actions, their own decisions, their own words come back to bite them. That's legitimate schadenfreude. To hold somebody to account or accuse somebody of something they did not do, even if that person is a bad person, that is not something to be celebrated. That's not something to wash off. You're the liar, and they're the victim of your lie. So if you had the strength of character that defies somebody like Craig Montiel, you would apologize, right? Because you're saying Craig Montiel, he entrapped people. He set people up to be characterized as villains for things they either did not do or things that were framed into things they did not do. In this instance, you're no different. So yes, if you want to be a better man than the one you maligned, you would apologize. It wouldn't be fun. You'd have to eat some crow, but it'd be the right thing to do.
Yeah, maybe if he gave us a heads up, I would owe him a heads up.
Did you give him a heads up that you're going to tell a story about him that was not true and use that to further your career and your victimhood narrative? Okay, so basically, section 1 was, the New Yorker said I told a story that wasn't true, and that was accurate. I lied. Story number 2, the New Yorker said I told a story that wasn't true, and that was accurate. I lied. All right, let's go for the grand finale. Apparently, he's only going to go for 3, and that's the envelope story.
Now, the last story I want to talk about is the anthrax scare. My last special, I talk about how I received a letter in the mail.
Did you?
And when I opened the letter, white powder fell on my daughter.
Did it?
And we had to take her to the hospital, only to find out it was not real anthrax.
Did that happen?
This, as you know, is not how...
As I know, that's not how it went. Okay, so it's already a lie. That's it. how it went down? Okay.
I am sorry for embellishing the story, or if anyone was worrying about me and my family.
Oh man, dude. I gotta say, this is probably the least effective explanation video. Now, admittedly, I don't watch all of the YouTube explanation videos that have ever been put out there. There's some pretty bad ones, some pretty bad apology videos. This isn't an apology video. This is a I lied, but. This entire video so far is yes, I lied, but. Okay.
Apologize.
Yeah.
But let me make something clear.
Okay, what is clear? What is factually accurate about your story?
A letter with white powder was sent to my apartment.
It was? Okay, so you reported this to Homeland Security, right?
In February of 2019.
Okay, you have a record of this?
I opened it in the kitchen. Powder fell on the table, and my daughter was just a few feet away.
Okay, you filed a police report, correct?
After 10 seconds of freaking out, I realized it was not anthrax.
How could you possibly know that? Okay. Maybe he has a medical degree that I'm just not aware of. How could you possibly know that?
And that someone was fucking with me, because people had been fucking with me since January 1st, 2019, after this happened.
Well, that's
After this, okay, I'm not going to play the CNN thing. I'm assuming it's a news report about, okay. Netflix pulls comedian's episode at request of Saudis. Okay.
An episode of a comedy show that was critical of Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman.
Okay, so you thought it was in response to that? I'm confused.
Of Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman.
The truth is, when this news broke, my life got very scary.
Okay, I don't have any context for this, and this was not mentioned in the article, so I'm not quite sure why we're here.
Saudi bots were spamming my socials. A threatening letter was sent to Netflix. I was getting weird phone calls at night. Then fake anthrax was sent to my house.
Okay. Where is the police report of the envelope being sent to your house? I mean, at the very least, right? You wouldn't keep that a secret. Right? You would have called the police. You would have informed some authority, right?
And after that happened, I asked Netflix for our security guard to follow me everywhere. And
okay. You received an envelope of white powder. Whether you knew it wasn't anthrax or not at the time, and I'm still direly curious to know how you figured that out just looking at it, where is the police report? Where is the call to Homeland Security on the basis of a terror threat? Even if it was a hoax, it is still a terror threat and has to be investigated. Right? Did the New Yorker leave that out?
And people noticed. Friends were texting me about seeing me rolling everywhere through New York with security. And at one point, my wife even asked our security detail if he knew any companies that sold those tiny GPS trackers for strollers.
I don't care about GPS trackers for strollers. Did you report the envelope to the authorities, and where is the record of that? And also, how did you know it wasn't anthrax at the time you opened it?
Because we were concerned that someone might try to kidnap or hurt our daughter.
None of this was in the article. The article never even touched on this. The article was talking about the events as you relayed them. The envelope, the powder, your daughter, the hospital trip, the argument with your wife. Those were the 5 elements of that story that the article talked about. So if you did receive an envelope, where is the record of that?
That is all real.
I don't care.
The danger at that time was palpable.
But that's got nothing to do with the truth of your story.
But Bina and I decided to keep the anthrax scare private.
No. Okay, the answer is no. You've got You take the threat so seriously that you up your security detail and you put a tracking device on your daughter's stroller, but you do not inform the authorities about an envelope filled with white powder. Are you kidding? All right. That makes absolutely no sense. You decided to keep it private. Why would you do that? For the sake of your family, you're not going to inform the federal authorities? You're not going to inform Homeland Security, the police, anybody? What?
Because we were worried that Netflix might shut down my show.
Wait. You receive at your home what constitutes, in no uncertain terms, as a death threat to both you, your wife, and your daughter. And your first concern over whether or not to call in this information to authorities is whether or not Netflix will cancel your show. Are you kidding me? Yeah, and just as a sort of reality check for a second, as Matt says in the chat, he didn't keep it private, literally in the show. Yeah, he adds it. It's part of his stand-up. It's part of his narrative. He didn't decide to keep it private. He decided to make it public and embellish it beyond words. If it even happened, which we don't know if it did because he never reported it, and apparently his reason for not reporting it was about self-enrichment. I mean, to heck with the possibility that somebody is targeting my family for death with ravenous disease. We have a Netflix special to go on, guys. Okay, that's holy cats, man. I'm backing up a little bit.
Keep the anthrax scare private because we were worried that Netflix might shut down my show, which would have put my entire staff out of work.
I didn't. Won't somebody please think of the staff? Okay, why would Netflix shut down your show for receiving a death threat? Right? I mean, you received all these weird texts and tweets and things prior. The Saudi government asked Netflix to take it off the air. There was already plenty of pressure on Netflix to take your show off the air. You thought a death threat was going to make them do it after an entire governmental body told them to do it? You don't think they would have stood in solidarity with you even more at that point? But no, because then you'd have to report that to the police, an actual anthrax death threat at your home? Are you kidding me?
Now you might be wondering, this is all terrifying, so why embellish? Why even say you took your daughter to the hospital?
Yeah. Well, no, I'm still stuck on Netflix was going to take my special off of the air because of this. So we decided to not tell authorities or Homeland Security.
The night of the anthrax scare.
The night of the purported anthrax scare. You've shown us and you've offered absolutely no evidence it happened. You didn't take a photograph of it the night that it happened. You don't have a police report. You didn't tell Homeland Security. You decided to keep it private. But okay, for the sake of argument, for the moment, I will stipulate that there was an anthrax scare. Okay, the night of the anthrax scare.
Bina and we got into a huge argument, and she kept asking, Hasan, what if this powder fell on our daughter?
What if Dr. Doom was Sorcerer Supreme? I actually like that story better because it has a really great ending. It has a very, very downbeat ending. If you guys don't know what I'm talking about, it's a issue of What If. I think it was issue number 146. Anyway, yeah, what if Dr. Doom became the Sorcerer Supreme? That's a great what if story. What if our daughter was exposed to anthrax and now I'm going to make that a reality on my show? Doesn't have the same ring to it. Okay, so the night of the thing that you say happened but have no proof and are offering no proof of, your wife said something to you that we can't be sure she actually ever said about a thing that may never have actually happened. Okay.
So I created the hospital scene to
I lied.
put the audience in that same shock and fear that me and Bina felt playing out that night.
So you lied.
Then I added the investigator character.
Where's the punchline? Wait, where is this? Is supposed to be a comedy special, right? Where is the punchline to this? Where's the joke embedded in this?
Because women in my life were telling me that Bina was coming off super naggy in old versions of the story.
This just keeps getting better and better. Okay.
So I gave some of Bina's lines to other characters so that her perspective was represented in a way that didn't reflect poorly on her.
Oh, okay. So you lied to protect her reputation. Okay. All right. And you lied to enhance your reputation. Okay. Do you see how that way of thinking and then coming on here and telling us that everybody's wrong about you makes everything very difficult to believe?
Again, I am sorry if
You're sorry if you what? You should say, I'm sorry I lied. Not I'm sorry if. There's no if here. There's no uncertainty. You lied. Whenever someone says, I'm sorry if, no, that's not how this works.
Was represented in a way that didn't reflect poorly on her. Again, I am sorry if I crossed a line here, but I told this story this way to put the audience on the roller coaster ride.
Don't bring the audience into this. They've got nothing to do with this. This is about you. You were not giving the audience, you're not serving the audience in this way. You were serving yourself. You're propping up yourself. You're putting yourself into a victimhood narrative in a story that never happened and tried to pass it off as fact and did so for years and years and years until somebody called you out on it. And your explanation doesn't make it any better or more believable that there was ever an actual inciting event. It's interesting to me that in each story prior to this, you offer up some emails, some kind of proof of a kind of the legitimacy of your perspective on it. And yet in this instance, the key element is receiving that envelope. And so far, aside from your word, nothing.
We were both experiencing at that time.
You weren't experiencing any of it. It didn't happen.
Now, look, I understand.
Do you? Do you really understand?
Why people were upset by all of this.
I wasn't upset. I was just entertained by you weaving a web of lies that you got caught in. And you still are. As far as I can tell, nothing about this video so far has done away with the fact that you lied about each story.
Different comedians have different expectations built into their personas.
What?
I thought I had two different expectations built into my work.
What?
My work as a storytelling comedian.
I'm still, again, in each story, I don't know what the punchline is.
And my work as a political comedian.
A political comedian. Okay. Admittedly, I never watched Patriot Act, so I don't know how much of a political comedian he is.
Where facts always come first.
Well, you see why people have to be re-examining all of that with a more careful eye now, and will have to do so going forward every time you say anything about yourself?
That is why the fact-checking on Patriot Act was extremely rigorous.
Was it? How much fact-checking did they put into your own stories that we're only finding out about their inaccuracies right now? Did you tell any of these stories on Patriot Act? That'd be my, and I don't know if the article specified this or not. I guess my question would be, any of these 4 stories, not 3, because there was the prom night, there was the envelope, there was Brother Eric, and then there was the embassy interview. That's the one that I'm really curious about. Because the embassy interview, if I'm not mistaken, was related to the Patriot Act show. And there were a lot of people that had worked on Patriot Act who were interviewed for the article. So are you going to talk about that? Did you say anything on Patriot Act that wasn't true?
The fact checking in my congressional testimony, deeply rigorous. I don't think there's any comedian on earth who has stood in front of more data viz than me.
Okay. A, I don't know if that's true or not, and it's irrelevant. B, none of that was brought up in the article talking about the stories that they were profiling, so that's not relevant. I don't know what that's supposed to prove. You've stood in front of a lot of infographics. And?
But in my work as a storytelling comedian.
A storytelling comedian.
I assumed that the lines between truth and fiction were allowed to be a bit more blurry. And
You assumed by telling a lie over and over and over again as an autobiographical fact. I'm still waiting. What's the punchline? Where was the comedy in these stories?
And I totally get why a journalist would be interested where that line sits.
Where that line sits? Okay, dude, you were not doing Norm Macdonald here. Okay, you weren't telling stories convoluted and absurd to reach a punchline. You relayed what you said were accurate historical events involving actual people that affected you and your family's lives. And when taken to task on the accuracy of these stories, which you have told and retold and built a reputation on, they're not true. That is the basis of the article. Now maybe the article hand-waved certain details or didn't give out some information here or there or otherwise, and that's entirely possible. And I can believe that to be the case. But in each turn so far, you have verified you made stuff up. I don't know what to tell you. You haven't disproved the thrust of the New Yorker article.
I just wish the reporter had been more interested in their own premise.
Their own premise was you lied. And the total takeaway from this video is, yes, I lied, but.
Someone genuinely curious about truth and stand-up wouldn't just fact-check my specials. They would fact-check a bunch of specials.
Okay. Fact-check a bunch of specials. You put yourself at the center of federal malfeasance and a terroristic threat. I mean, setting aside the prom king thing, which honestly is probably the least of the stories that I find interesting in the grand scheme of things, except for the possible repercussions to that lady. And I'm still curious to know if the New Yorker said that that lady was doxxed and harassed by people that had watched his special. Was that true or not? They didn't offer up any direct evidence in the article. I'll admit that. They didn't put any quotes. They didn't show any emails. They didn't have any direct information, as far as I can tell, from the woman involved. But that story aside, the big ones here are, I was the target of a federal entrapment situation, and I had potentially deadly materials sent to my home and exposed to my family. The article showed you lied. You admitted you lied. You're admitting now that you lied. Is you're willing to change things to better accommodate you and your family's reputation and to ensure that you retain your career through a Netflix special, despite a threat to your... Okay, anyway.
They would establish a control group, a baseline.
This is not a science experiment, dude. You said a thing and they tried to verify it. They could not verify it. They asked you about it. You gave your responses and admitted you lied. The,
See how far outside the bounds I was in relation to others.
it doesn't matter. Okay, so if everybody else is lying, then you're okay? If every other comedian was telling stories of autobiographical fact that were, in fact, lies, then you're in safe boundaries by telling things that didn't happen about your life? Is that where I'm going to here?
And they wouldn't just cherry pick a few stories.
Oh, well, they picked out the stories that they could feasibly verify because you gave like timelines and dates and very specific events and people involved that they could check up on. I mean, if you tell a story that has no date on it, that has no recognizable names on it, if it's merely anecdotal, that's not really a story that can be followed up on, right? There's no eyewitnesses. You can't go question an individual like, I went to the store the other day and I ran into this lady and she said this and I said that and boy, wasn't that funny. And then I went home. Not really a story to follow up on. Yeah, they picked out 4 stories. You decided to only talk about 3 that had verifiable dates and events. Why didn't you talk about the 4th story? I wonder. Why didn't you talk about the embassy story?
They would give their readers a sense of proportionality of what was true versus what was false.
Proportionality! It's interesting that you use that word when you opened up this entire video talking about what's going on in the Middle East, because proportionality is kind of a hot topic right now, but I won't get into that. Proportionality. They're talking about you. Your favorite subject. They're talking about you. They're not talking about all of comedians. They're talking about you. They're talking about a guy who's built his career in part or in large part, I can't tell, on his own experience, on his life story, his life stories, which are questionable, about a guy who's getting ready to take potentially a position as the host of The Daily Show, which is, whether you like it or not, come to be known as something of a journalistic endeavor. And you've got a guy whose personal integrity is in question. And so when they ask in the article whether or not it might be a little bit uncomfortable if you're hosting The Daily Show and you have to cover someone like George Santos, a known liar and fabulist, when you yourself are exposed as a liar and fabulist, wouldn't that not be uncomfortable? Wouldn't that not bring up some questions? But okay.
In my last special, I talk about almost getting sued by a hedge fund. 100% true.
Here's the thing, dude. True events in your life that you can relay as a story do not countermand the lies that you've told otherwise. I'm sure a lot of things have happened to you that are true. That doesn't make lying okay.
Getting ball surgery so we could have kids. 100% true.
The article didn't bring up either of those stories, probably because if they looked into them, they could verify they were true. They weren't talking about your truths. They were talking about your elaborate lies.
Netflix pulling my episode on Saudi and Saudi. 100% true.
And so why do you need to make up stories? If you've got all of these real life stories of happenstance and misadventure and everything, then why make up stuff? Why not just tell the truth? Like you asked us and yourself at the beginning of this video, why not just say what actually happened to you?
Getting rejected from prom because of my race. 1000% true.
That was not the thrust of the article's investigation. Did you walk up to the house on the night of the prom and were rejected there at the doorstep, all dressed up with flowers in your hand? No, you didn't. It happened days prior. You verified that. Again, unless I'm forgetting something, and I apologize if I am, but when that article was relaying those events, I don't think they spent any time questioning whether or not the motivations of the family's desire for their daughter to date you was racist or not. They were talking about the details you relayed as far as the events. Now, whether or not the audience could draw some suspicion about your telling of the story and the details about their motivations, that's legitimate, because at that point, we only had you as the source for it. But they didn't dwell on that so much as the fact that you made the story up.
If the reporter were genuinely curious about the idea of truth in stand-up, they would have had to report that the majority of my stories are true.
The majority of your stories are true. So there is some sizable percentage that aren't. Okay, tell us about all this other stories that aren't true. I'll just lay it all out there. You got a couple minutes left. List off all of the bits or all of the jokes where you tell a story about your real life that aren't true, right? Follow up with the New Yorker. Do them one better. And clear the decks. Tell us all about the stories that aren't true otherwise.
But their article led with the opposite, saying much of my stand-up never happened to me.
They called into question your credibility and your honesty with things that were demonstrably untrue. All right, let me read that quote he's got up on the screen. Don't know if he's going to read it. In his stand-up specials, the former Patriot Act host often recounts harrowing experiences he's faced as an Asian American and Muslim American. Does it matter that much of it? Wait, does it matter that much of it never happened to him? Yeah, much of it. That's a pretty vague word there. I mean, would it matter? I mean, at this point, what if everything you put up on your stand-up wasn't true? What if it was all storytelling? You'd legitimize it by saying, well, it was emotionally true, and I was leading the audience towards a conclusion and a point and everything else. So why would it matter if any of it was true, if your justification for the lies that you've told are legitimate in your mind? Do you see that it kind of makes everything come under question when you justify lies by saying that it's all worth it for the point? Doesn't that naturally bring everything you say into question? What if there's elements of your quote-unquote true stories that you embellished for the sake of the point, all right, for the sake of the drama, for the sake of carrying the audience along to your emotional truth? You're not doing yourself any favors here, dude. You should have just said, I lied and I'm sorry.
That is false.
Okay.
Nearly all of it happened to me.
Nearly all of it? Nearly all of it. Dude, what are you listening to yourself right now?
Some of it didn't.
Some? How much is some? For any particular story, anecdote, or whatever else you tell about your life, what percentage of that is the sum of your lies? On average. Maybe you can stand in front of an info chart for that one.
Even the last line of the article is stripped of the context to leave you with the impression that I'm some sort of unrepentant liar.
Well, we're only being apologized to now, and all this stuff started at least 9 years ago. So
he told me the emotional truth is first, the factual truth is secondary.
Is that quote incorrect, or is there more context? And I'm being serious here. I'm not trying to be facetious, because obviously, like I say, the article shows us only what the author wanted to show. Okay, so did you not say that? Or if you did say that, is there more context around it?
We tried really hard to have them put in the full quote,
okay,
with full context.
Okay,
but they refused.
Go ahead.
So let me leave you with the full context.
Okay.
When people see a Hasan Minhaj show, there's two different expectations.
Okay.
There's the Hasan Minhaj you see maybe here at the Comedy Cellar, where there's an implicit agreement between the audience, like we're going down into a basement, like we're about to see a 1 hour comedy show that feels like there's an emotional roller coaster ride.
Okay, first off, I got to pause because I have to pause. like I say, I've never watched the entirety of one of his specials, so I don't know what his style is. So maybe that's true. I don't know. The one thing I wanted to mention, though, is the fact that apparently this interview took place on Tuesday, September 12th of this year, and the article came out only 3 days later, which tells me they did all of their research and all of their fact checking and everything else and made sure they were on the right point with what they had before approaching him and talking to him directly, and then wrote and published the article. So they came to this interview with everything that they'd researched prior. And the efficiency of that is kind of impressive to me. But okay, so when people come to a show, they're expecting an emotional roller coaster ride.
Sure. Then there's Hasan Minhaj, the guy you've seen on The Daily Show as a correspondent, or the guy from Patriot Act on Netflix, which is, I am not the primary character. The news story is the primary character.
Okay, so you're citing a distinction between doing a stand-up where you're the center of attention and you're the one, sort of presenting the information, whereas you're playing a character relaying information. Okay, but in both instances, you are Hasan Minhaj, the comedian. Okay.
With the latter, the truth comes first. Comedy sometimes comes second to make the infotainment.
Okay, so Daily Show, the truth comes first.
The sugar on the medicine. In this, the emotional truth is first. The factual truth is secondary.
Okay, so in the context of a comedy show, the emotional truth comes first, the factual truth is secondary. Okay. They weren't talking about you on The Daily Show. And the only story that I know of that related directly to the Patriot Act show, the story about him going to the embassy and doing the interview and all that stuff, he's not mentioning that story in this video. So the whole Daily Show Patriot Act thing is actually irrelevant to the thrust of his testimony here. We're talking about the stories he told as part of his Netflix specials and stand-up comedy, and had repeated in conversations that had nothing to do with stand-up after the fact. So, the emotional truth is first, the factual truth is secondary when it comes to relaying a story in one of your stand-up specials that centers you as the victim of something, even though it's autobiographical and involves other people that can be followed up on. I don't know that the New Yorker's use of that quote falls outside the realm of context at this point.
In political comedy.
Which is not what they were talking. Okay. They brought up the Patriot Act show because it was part of your CV, but the stories they laid out there, except for the one about the embassy deal, none of that had to do with political comedy.
Facts come first.
Okay. So tell us about the embassy deal. Why are you leaving out the embassy story? The article had 4 primary stories that they were fact-checking. You've only talked about 3. Why are you leaving out the embassy story? That was a political story, the way that it was relayed. That was a story related to your Patriot Act specials, or show, sorry. Why aren't you mentioning, why are you leaving out that story?
In comedic storytelling, emotions come first.
Again, autobiographical anecdotes that you laid off as true in replacement for other people's stories. You said it yourself.
That is what I said, and that is what I meant. Going forward, will I be more thoughtful about sticking to the facts in my storytelling?
Can we believe anything you say? You're willing to shape facts and story bits to service yourself and your own reputation.
Absolutely.
Oh, well, I'm glad you're going to do that. Only now that the New Yorker called you out on it. You see, unfortunately, this is not a video that's coming out 5 years ago or something, where you, of your own volition, on reflection, looked back at your work and said, it's probably better if I just kind of come clean, try to clear some things up. I realize now, after thinking about it, that people might be getting the wrong impression about things based on the stories that I told. And I can understand that because, I told them for the sake of a bit, this, that, and the other. But just to clarify, in case anybody was confused, this didn't happen. This didn't happen. This was all for this. If this had happened 5 years ago and you'd done it just of your own, initiative, okay. I probably wouldn't even heard about it. Nobody would be talking about it now. You would have headed it off at the pass. But we're talking about a New Yorker article that is at least 9 years, depending on the circumstances of when these stories were told, after the fact. And only now, when put into a corner, are you having to admit fault, although admittedly not very completely. None of this is helping you, dude. This entire video should have been out 5 minutes long. It should have said, the New Yorker said this and about this story, and you're right, I lied, and I apologize. The New Yorker said this about this story, and you're right, I lied, I apologize. That's all this should have been.
I have no problem with honest, good faith critique because I am always trying to improve as a performer and as a person.
Honest, good faith critique. Okay, well, I don't know. Like I say, I can't read the mind of the author of the New Yorker article. I don't know what information they left out or they themselves embellished because, like I say, they didn't quote the lady on the whole doxing thing. They didn't show any evidence of the harassment of the lady over the special or the bit or everything. So that part might be some legitimacy to it. But other than that, I'm not quite sure what else about the article did you wrong.
Look, the guy in this article is a proper fucking psycho.
Like I said, I don't know about psycho. It's got nothing to do with it. I don't know why. It's not quite that extreme. You don't have to be a psycho to be a liar. And being a fabulist does not make you a psycho, unless it's like chronic. But admittedly, I don't know how much of your stories are true or not. So,
but I now hope you feel like the real me is not.
Dude, I never thought you were a psycho. I never thought you were a psycho. There's nothing in that article led me to believe you're a psycho. Okay. You're an entertainer who's trying to stay in the spotlight. And you're stealing other people's experiences and you're making up things to aggrandize yourself and create a mythos around you of specialness that you don't possess otherwise. Even though I'm sure there's plenty of things that have happened to you in life that would be interesting in and of themselves without embellishment. But the fact that you embellish your real life, use your wife, your child, real people, your former girlfriend, an FBI informant, Jamal Khashoggi, the fact that you bring all these other people into your lies to build yourself up and build up a narrative and a lore around you that is not true. Yeah, no, you haven't helped yourself here. Not in any way, shape, or form.
I'm just a guy with IBS and low sperm motility.
Okay, self-deprecation at this point does not invalidate your lack of trustworthiness.
Again, there is much more important news happening in the world right now.
Yeah, there is. There wasn't a month ago. I don't know why you waited until now to do this, but maybe it's just a production thing.
It needs your attention.
Of course, if you're saying that, then this had to have been filmed after October 7th at some point. So I don't know exactly when. That means that between September 12th, September 15th, since the article was published, you waited the better part of a month at least to say something. But okay.
So I appreciate you watching.
Mm-hmm.
I take the note.
Uh-huh.
I hope to see you at the next show.
Okay. All right, there you go. That is the in totality Hasan Minhaj's rebuttal to the New Yorker article, and my thoughts in between. Of course, I encourage everybody, if you're still curious about this story, to find the article for yourself and read it and come to your own conclusions. A link to my original broadcast about the article is in the description below if you're curious about that. Sure, he brought up some questions about, where did the New Yorker get their information? How did they reach that conclusion? Fair enough. There's plenty of points in there where they didn't give any backup information. They didn't really, give a quote or cite an email or a tweet or anything. So it's possible that there are elements in there. But the core question of the article was, here's the stories he told. We couldn't verify their accuracy. And he admitted that he made stuff up. And none of that was disproven in the course of this video. It seemed to be some kind of attempt to waylay any thoughts about him being a psycho. That seemed to be the main thesis of this. Again, I'm not a psychologist. I don't know. I don't think you need to be a psycho to be someone who's looking for clout, chasing clout, making up stories, a fabulist. But, either way, I'll take a minute here for some comments out of you guys, and then I'll wrap up because I think my voice is leaving me. Advocast Diaboli, maybe I'm the odd man out. I just assume any storyteller is embellishing and fabricating near everything they say anyways. It all depends on what we're talking about and what context. I asked the same question of somebody in college. I've talked about my college experience with English classes and things. We one time had a guy come in. Well, our teacher forced us to buy this guy's little chapter book of stories. And he was a local author. That was the big thrust of the teacher's idea on this, that we're going to read stories from local authors and then have those authors come in and talk to them, which was actually kind of an interesting concept. But anyway, I read this story about this guy talking about his childhood and all these interesting things that happened to him in his childhood and everything. And as I read the story, I thought, this is being told retrospectively in a way that is very poetic and has a lot of details and things and so on from very early on in this guy's childhood. I think he said he was like 9 years old or something. And so when the author came into the classroom and we sat down to talk to him about things, I asked him about this story and I said, how much of this story is true? Right? Because I said, these events and the way that you tell them are so vivid and have such interesting details and quotations and things. And, maybe some people out there have amazing memories, but to say that you remember exactly what this person said at this point in time when you were 9 years old and that the conversation went like this, I thought, is all of that actually true? And he said, well, for the sake of the story, I have to, sort of put it through a lens of, where I am now and my things. So true, right? Nearly every story you tell is going to be relayed through a lens of some kind. It's the same thing you have when you have that example from like law school where two people see the exact same event, right? Guy runs into a room, does a thing, runs out of the room. And then he asks the class, what did you see? And you have 7 different people give 7 different answers because the same thing happened, the same thing objectively happened, and then different perspectives give different twists on it, right? Or the whole thing of you read a news story, and depending on who's reading it, one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. Okay, sure. But when you're laying out stories with this amount of detail and you're saying these happened to you and it's all very intricate and convoluted and it all centers you as the target of it's when you start leveraging that into your own personal gain and sympathy. Derek Leroux, I missed most of it. I'll catch up after the show. All right. Okay. And Emily Williams, thank goodness it's over. I'm sorry to have drug you through this. I just thought it wouldn't be fair of me to know that he put out a response to this after I did a stream on the article, and I didn't at least give him his day to speak, I suppose, at least on my channel, to be fair. That's all. Let's see. Anything else from you guys before I go? Johnny Hellcat, his style is storytelling. Definitely tries to grab you emotionally, kind of like Berbiglia. I don't know who that is. I don't know who that is. But yeah, his aim is to emotionally enrapture the audience. And so he crafts his stories to do that. Okay. There's a way to do that without then pretending like these things actually happen to you. Like I say, look at the model of Norm Macdonald. If you could be the emotional roller coaster version of Norm Macdonald on making up a story that people have a pretty good idea probably didn't happen and is more sort of outlandish for the sake of making a point, and it's obvious that that's the case for a bit or a punchline, sure. When you start relating yourself to world events, I'm still direly curious to know why he didn't bring up the embassy story in this apology video or rebuttal video. Why did he leave out that story of all of them? Because that one's pretty cut and dry. Maybe he couldn't find a way around that one because it had everything to do with when events took place, historical recorded events. I have to guys to be like Mike Birbiglia, author and stand-up. I can't say I've heard of him. I'll have to take a look at it. Anyway, everybody, I'm going to wrap up here. Thank you for joining me on this follow-up to my previous stream. I hope you found it interesting in some way, shape, or form. Again, as mentioned at the top of the show, apparently it really helps now and is almost necessary now that everybody get their notifications so long as people are liking these videos, as long as they're commenting on them, and as long as you are subscribed with notifications. I usually don't sort of beg for that kind of, adherence to those things on my streams, but I guess that's how the algorithm works now. So please, if you haven't already, hit the like button, subscribe if you're not already, and for notifications, and leave a comment afterwards if you want to, I suppose. Beyond that, everyone, thank you so much for joining me. Moderators, thank you for keeping an eye on things, even though everyone here is always so well behaved. You have very little to do. Everybody who donated, either to myself or to the GoFundMe's pinned to the top of the chat box for Maddie, Angry Illinoisian, and the soon-to-be married Roan Harushan. Thank you guys so much for taking a look at those and donating or sharing if you're able. Everyone, I hope you have a good rest of your Sunday and weekend. I hope the week ahead of you is safe and fun and light and everything else, given the state of the world. I hope you're all safe and well. If you're not well, please get well soon, and I will see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.